Hey guys, how you going? In this video I'm going to be showing you how to create this footer right here from scratch using plain HTML and CSS. So essentially it's a decent looking, responsive and mobile friendly footer. If I was to go into mobile view and then scroll down, we can see the footer converts into a single column mode, obviously making it really nice and easy to use on mobile devices. It is also going to be supported on many, if not all, of the major web browsers, including Safari and Internet Explorer. So anyway, let's go inside this tab here and refresh the page, and we can begin work on the actual footer. So right here I have essentially just a base HTML template. This is what I think most websites might actually look like. So essentially you've got this main center content bit here, and if I was to inspect here, we can see in the body I have this main wrapper, and this wrapper is going to contain all of the content. Now this right here, using this class of wrapper on this div is not required for this footer to work. It is only going to help us later on to add one single final touch to the actual final result. So don't worry if you don't have this wrapper class, it is not a requirement for this to work. Inside the wrapper I have this container. So this container is actually a requirement. I think most websites are going to have something like this, essentially just a main container that is something like 1000 pixels wide and will center the content. If you don't have this container class, you just need to make one. So let's go inside the actual text editor, and we can see here I have, of course, just the base HTML template, the wrapper, not required, and the main container. Inside the CSS we have this stuff here. So just real quickly, a margin of 0 on the HTML and body obviously is going to remove that about 5 pixel gap on each edge. So this is obviously something you want to consider doing. Once again, this wrapper is not required for most of this tutorial. And the container obviously is a requirement. You basically just need to have these properties set, or at least most of these set. Most importantly, this max width and this margin, to actually, of course, create some sort of centered container. As I said, most websites already have this class set up. If not, you're going to need to make one. So anyway, now we can actually jump into the actual footer itself. Okay, so let's go inside the index.html file and we can begin right below the main wrapper. Okay, so I'll just go onto the left side here and use my reference code. So anyway, so down here we're going to make a new element right here. It's going to be a footer element. Okay, so we can say footer just like this. We're going to also give it a class of footer. Okay, cool. So now essentially we're going to be writing up these elements and then applying CSS to them one by one. So for now, with the footer, I'm going to hop back inside the CSS and actually target the class of footer. So first off, we're going to set a font size to be 0.85 EM. Okay, sorry, REM. So that is the 85% of the root font size. So essentially it's going to be 85% of 16px right up here within the root element. Okay, we can then set some padding of 20px and 0, so 20px top and bottom and 0 for the sides. Okay, also a line height of 1.6 definitely helps readability, as well as a background. It's just going to be a really dark grey. Okay, so triple threes right there. Let's now save this and refresh, and we have this result right here. Okay, cool. So looking not too bad so far. We can now move on to adding all of this text here and some copyright information, as well as the actual horizontal rule you see right there. So back inside here, let's once again begin with the HTML. So essentially this is going to work by having some sort of footer text container. So we're going to say new div with a class of footer __text dot container. So basically, this is why the container class is important. Okay, so obviously this will then center the content of the actual footer. Okay, this footer text, I'm using the BEM or the block element modifier CSS naming convention, but you can of course name your classes whatever you like. Within the footer text container, we can add just a paragraph of dummy text. For example, I'm going to copy and paste what I've got here on my demonstration example. Okay, so I can just format this and go back right inside here. Okay, cool. We can then add a paragraph for the copyright information. We can say and copy, then copyright. Oh, hold on. Copyright 2019 your website, for example. Okay, so usually you would put your and copy, that's for the copyright symbol, and then you can put your copyright 2019, then your website and name or your company name. And then we can also put a horizontal rule, so we can say hr.class footer__hr. And we can save this and refresh, and we have this result right here. So looking actually pretty decent and quite close to the original right here. So now we can just simply add a bit of styling to the text, and of course the horizontal rule. So we can go back inside the CSS, and we can target the footer__ text class. So for this one, we're going to say color, and we're going to make it essentially just a really light gray. So obviously it's going to contrast nicely with the actual background of the footer. Along with this, we can add some padding and make it 3px and then 15px. Now also, we're going to add a display of block. Even though a paragraph tag is already a block element, adding a block here, because we are going to be adding some more classes to this rule set. So for now, we're going to add display block here. It's going to make things a lot easier later on. Cool. So now we can target the footer HR. So down here, we're going to say footer__HR. We're going to give it a height of 1px, a border of none, and a background of essentially 1 bit more lighter than the background of the actual footer. In this case, it's going to be 444s. Okay? We can save this here and refresh, and we have this result right here. So we can see using no border and a height on the HR, we've essentially just overridden the default styling of a HR in many of the browsers. Okay, so now we can move right on to the actual links as part of the footer. So this structure is going to be really simple. We're going to basically have just a main container for each one of the 4 columns containing each link. And then each column is going to get its own little class, and then from there we can style up the links and the headings and things like that. So let's go back inside here, and we are going to add the HTML. So we can say div right here with a class of footer__ sections. We're going to also give it a class of container once again to center the actual text. So basically, the footer sections class is going to contain footer sections. So we can say here new div with a class of footer__ section. Okay. For now, we can say section 1 and then duplicate this 4 times for each one of your sections. Of course, you can decide yourself how many sections that you actually need. And in some cases, you might want to simply have a section filling up space. For example, you want 2 things here, then on the far right, you might want 1 more section. But anyway, we're going to keep it simple and have 4 sections right there. Now inside the CSS, we can first off just target the footer sections class. We can say footer__ sections. Now this is very important here to make this essentially displaying as a flex. Okay, so we're going to say display and then flex. This allows us to have the 4-column layout. We then need to say flex wrap and make this wrap. The reason for this is because on mobile devices, as we shrink down, I'll just go inside the live example, as we shrink down here, maybe on tablet devices, sorry, when we shrink down we can see we have the items wrapping on a second row here, and of course flex wrap allows us to actually have this responsiveness. Okay, cool. So anyway, back inside the CSS, we're going to finish this off by adding a padding of 0, and essentially this padding 0 is going to remove the padding which comes from the container class. Okay, so essentially this padding here, 15px on each side, is going to be removed with the padding 0 right here. Okay, cool. And of course what that does is essentially allows us to add the padding on the actual sections themselves. So speaking of that, let's actually go down here and target the footer underscore section, and we're going to firstly give it a box sizing of border box. This is very important because we're going to be using percentage widths down here, and want to make sure essentially that the widths don't ever change even if there is padding enabled. So speaking of that, let's say padding, and we're going to say 15px and then 0. Okay, so top and bottom 15px. This allows us to leave some space, once again on mobile devices, just some space between each section right there, as we can see right there. Okay, cool. And one last thing for the footer section is going to be a flex shrink of 0. This just ensures that the width here is going to stay the same no matter what content is inside it. Okay, cool. So I think we are done with all of this section. So we can save this and refresh, and we have this result right here. We can see obviously we have the padding on the left side to actually fill up, and that'll be done with the actual links and the text itself. Okay, but apart from that, we've got this nice looking 4-column layout for each section. We can now move on to the final part of the video, and that is going to be the headings and of course the links. So back inside the HTML, let's hop inside each section, and we're going to type out something like this. A new span with a class of, actually let's write out span, with a class of footer underscore title. Inside here you can put each one of your different headings or your titles. For example, find out more. Okay, and then for each link, it's going to be a simple anchor tag. Right now we'll make it go to nothing, so putting a hash there basically is going to do nothing for the actual link, and a class of footer underscore link. Then inside here we can say link number 1, for example, duplicate this 4 times for demonstration, and essentially you have the HTML for your footer all complete. Okay, we can just copy this stuff and paste it below. Okay, we can make this one something like visit our stores. We can have 2 links for this one. Okay, and do the same thing of course for the remaining 2. Something like support us looks okay, and we can make this 3 links. And for the final one, we can make it let's actually make this one 5 links, and we can make the one previously 3, that's fine. And you know what, actually for better demonstration, to match up directly with my demonstration, we can do 5 and then 3, and then here we can say follow us online. Cool. So now that is the HTML complete. Save this and refresh, and we get this right here. So now it's just a matter of adding some CSS to not only color and style up each link, but also add a bit of responsiveness for mobile devices. I'm also going to be showing you a trick to actually eliminate this white space on the bottom here. Okay, and this basically is going to happen whenever your text is too short. But for now, let's come back to this problem, and later on I'll just go back to actually styling up the actual links, of course. So back inside here, we're going to be targeting first off the title and the link class. So as I said earlier, with this with this footer text, we're going to add a few things here. We're going to add footer underscore underscore link, and we're going to add footer underscore underscore title. Okay, so this is why the display of block was necessary earlier, because I just didn't want to forget to add this block. And basically, it just ensures that our links and our titles display on separate lines, so to have a nice column layout. Okay, cool. So now we can actually target the title and the link individually. We can say footer underscore underscore title, give it a font weight of bold, for example, and also a margin bottom of 10px just to separate the actual the links. Okay, we can also say footer link and target this one directly, and for the footer links we're going to simply remove the default text decoration or the blue underline which appears on links by default. So now I'm going to save this and refresh, and we have this here. So not bad. It's basically identical to the demo example, but unfortunately we don't have all of the highlights just like this. So to add this in, it's going to be really straightforward, and we can do it by going back inside the CSS, and we're going to say footer underscore underscore link on hover, if I can spell it correctly. On hover, we're going to set the color to be a really light gray. Now for the background, we're going to make the background RGBA 255, 255, 255, and something like, let's just do 0.25. So now we're going to have a 25% opaque white, which should look nice against the dark background. I'm going to save this and refresh, and hover over the links here. And there we go. So it might be a bit too bright. I might actually reduce this percentage to be something like 15%. Save this, refresh, and now we have a nice light grey behind the links on hover. Okay, cool. So now we have the final part of the video, of the footer, sorry, and that is going to be the mobile responsiveness. So here, essentially on screens that are 768 pixels or less, we are going to basically form a two row or 2x2 layout. So this can be accomplished quite easily by simply saying at media screen with a max width of 768 pixels. Okay, so 768 pixels or less with an and in the middle right there, sorry. We're going to say footer section, we're going to simply change the width of the sections to be something like width and then 50%. So 2x2 works nicely just like that. I'm going to save this and refresh, and we can see now we get a 2x2 layout. If I was to expand greater than 768 pixels like this, we can see it goes back to the 4-column layout. Okay, cool. So back inside here, we can do the same thing, but for even smaller screens. So basically at 480 pixels or less, we're going to simply make it a single column layout for mobile devices. So 100% right there. Save this and refresh, and then just resize down a bit more, and now we can see it goes down to a single column layout. Okay, awesome. So that is basically the footer all done, and up until this point you didn't need the class of wrapper. So now I'm going to show you a trick to essentially eliminate this problem right here. The problem is, if I was to go back inside the text editor and actually remove some of my content, so let's get rid of 2 of these paragraph tags from the content. Okay, I'm going to save this and refresh, and now we can see we get a nice white gap below the footer. So if you want the footer to expand to 100% of the page width, you can do this by doing a bit of a trick with the wrapper class right here. Okay, so let's go back inside the editor and just modify some CSS. If you don't have the wrapper class, then of course you're going to need to add that in. So let's firstly just remove the background from the footer itself. So this background here with these 333s, let's just remove this. Instead, we're going to be adding a background to the actual page itself. So let's go up here now and say background and make this the same color, so 333s, okay? And for the wrapper, we have to add a class of, a property of overflow auto. And this overflow auto is essentially gonna ensure us that the margin from this paragraph, we can see right there in the orange just above and below the actual paragraph tag, that orange space, that is the margin. So that overflow of auto is going to ensure the margin stays within this container right here. As we can see, the wrapper has space on the top and bottom, right? So adding an overflow of auto ensures that this padding, which is creating that gap, this paragraph margin, which is creating this gap, is going to be contained within the container itself. And I'll show you what I mean a bit later on. But for now, we're going to say overflow auto right there to remove that problem. Okay. Now, I believe that is all we need to do for the to fix that problem. So now I'm going to save this and refresh here, and this is what we get. So we can see it is now expanded to the bottom of the page. What's happening here is essentially the body, the background on the body is essentially taking over the whole page, and that's why you can see it on the bottom here. And then of course the footer itself is simply just it's got a transparent background, so the body background is actually being used for the bottom. And the reason why this is white up here is because of course the wrapper has a background of white. If I was to remove this and then save it, it then goes to be dark. So the wrapper essentially ensures us we get white for the content background. Now with this overflow auto thing, essentially we can see now the actual paragraph margin is contained within the container, okay? And the wrapper is essentially it is taking the full height of the actual content instead of being pushed down and sort of squished by the margin of the paragraph. If I was to get rid of this overflow auto, save this and refresh, we can see we get lines on top and bottom. So of course now putting it back will essentially force that margin from the paragraph to be contained within the wrapper itself. Okay, so I'm also going to be leaving all of the code for this footer in the description, so be sure to check that out. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later.